What's up, everybody? What's going on? Welcome to another episode of the Lead From Here podcast. I'm Jason. Today, wanted to talk briefly. It's probably not going to be a long episode because we've talked about it a bunch of different times in different ways, but I wanted to hit on an email I got, and the person was asking me, I just went through one of the biggest failures in my career. How do I recover from this? How do I pull myself out of this failure? And it was heartbreaking to hear how frustrated this person is and really hear that they feel lost or that something's wrong. They kind of gave me a brief overview of the failure, but I don't want to go into too many details. But ultimately, big deadline, missed, shit happens. I understand that can be frustrating. I understand from a company perspective and from a goals perspective, it can be impactful to the bottom line, no doubt. But from a leadership perspective, this is something that I'm going to talk about and beat to death over time on this podcast. People talk about failure. It's bad. Failure is bad, and there's this stigma around failure that we just have to eliminate. Failure is absolutely the number one thing that any company that finds any success in any major way will have failure multiple times. It's just the reality of it. If you run a highly effective team, failure is absolutely part of the culture of your company. And if you're not embracing failure, then something's wrong. It doesn't mean you should just be failing, the same thing over and over again, or the same person failing all the time. That's different. If you're looking at failure through the lens of we did something wrong, you are doing something wrong, but it's not the failure. Now, let's say somebody in your team is failing over and over again, or they're failing the same way over and over again, or both. You need some directed coaching. Pull in HR, look at a performance improvement plan, look at how you can help get them out of whatever's going on there. Maybe they're not a right fit, maybe they need more training. There's coaching opportunity there. If you're not seeing changes in your team and you guys are failing the same way over and over again, what are you doing with that failure? Are you learning from that failure? I would say if you're doing the same failure over and over again, you're probably not learning. So what did you add, edit, or delete from a process? Did you add any documentation? What are the things you're doing to improve your team's ability to avoid failure in areas that you've already failed? How do you do that? How are you taking the necessary steps to learn from that failure? If you're not, you're also doing it wrong. Failure is not bad. How you respond to failure or don't respond to failure from a learning perspective. If you don't learn from it, you are failing. That's a bad failure as a leader. To not learn from your failure is the ultimate failure. And that is something that will be the long-term death of your team, or the short-term death, depending on how bad the failure is. But ultimately, failure isn't the problem. It's how you respond to failure. What did you learn? How do you make sure it doesn't happen again? What are the things you put in place? Process, documentation, team norms, whatever it is. How do you keep it from happening again? As long as you're doing that, failure doesn't really matter in the grand scheme. Sure, you might miss a deadline. Sure, you might miss a goal. Sure, you might miss a target. That's all part of it. If you're pushing hard and you're really trying to innovate and go beyond where you are now, you're going to run into brick walls sometimes, and that's just part of it. Figure out how to work around that brick wall and avoid that same brick wall if it comes up again. Make sure you focus on learning from your failure when it happens. Make sure that whatever you put in place stays in place and doesn't get forgotten. If it keeps happening, look at what you're doing. And is it a weak resource in your team? Is it just somebody that needs to be coached or moved out? What is it? Make sure you're dealing with that. And failure is just failure. It's just a step in the process to success every single time. Hope this is helpful, and hope this answered your question, and I hope others learn from it. Take care of yourself, take care of those people around you, and I hope everybody's doing well. Take care.